What's going on, guys? Brock with Bassin 227 back here again with another video for you today. We're cruising right along into this video again. Sorry for a little bit of delay. I've had some work stuff come up as well as some personal family stuff that I've had to be able to kind of focus on a little bit. But without further ado, we're back. We're ready to rock and roll on this thing. We're continuing this beginner series. And you know, the last video we talked about the only 3 rods that you need. And now we're going to move into a topic that can be confusing, for some. I know when I first started out, this was one topic that I didn't really understand. And as I fished more and did my research, you know, I've finally been able to, I was able to figure out this topic. So what am I going to be talking about today for you guys is understanding gear ratios. Some of you may know exactly how this stuff works. You can either hang around and enjoy the ride, or you know, you can click off. That's okay. This video again is designed for more of that beginner base that's really wanting to get a better understanding of things, how things work, and what they need to be prepared to get out and be able to fish. So I'm not going to have a plethora of reels here. I've got a couple that I'll use as examples. I've got a brand new, the new Daiwa Tatula CT that we'll kind of use when we talk about bait casters. And then I've got my wife's reel, which is the Daiwa Legolas, which I think they actually got a new model out that's silver and blue, which is pretty freaking sweet. But, so, understanding gear ratios, okay? So, what is a gear ratio? What does it represent? So, basically, that's going to represent for every one full rotation that you make is going to be how many times that spool is going to spin, okay? So when you think about, let's say, a gear ratio that's 5 to 1, okay? 5.5 to 1. That means for every one full rotation, right? So one full rotation, the spool is going to spin 5.5 times, okay? The same is going to be if you're using a 6.3. One full rotation, 6.3, so on and so forth. So you kind of get that idea. Now, when you're trying to understand gear ratios, you know, that plays a big part in, you know, the lure that you're fishing with, and the slower the gear ratio, which is going to be like a 5.5 to 1, is you're not going to want to use that, for example, when you're, you know, flipping thick mats and everything else, right? So you want to be aware of understanding how to use your gear ratios for the techniques that you're fishing, right? So for example, when I look at a super slow crank and reel, a 5.5 to 1, let's just say, something along the lines, it's 5 point something. To me, I'm looking at that in a couple different ways. One, immediately the first thing that comes to mind is slow rolling a spinnerbait. You know, where you want to go slow. For me, I'm a really fast, I tend to be a fast fisherman a lot of times, and I got to try to get a little bit better at that. But when you have that low of a gear ratio, you know, it allows you to be able to slow down. So slow rolling spinnerbait is the first one off the top of my head that comes to mind for that. Another technique would be like really deep cranking. To me, when I classify that I would need to go to something that low for my personal preference, is going to be if I'm fishing anything about 15 feet or deeper. So that's when I personally would gravitate towards a reel like that. Next one up would be like your 6.3. So a lot of times, majority of the time, what I'm using that for is crankbaits, square bills, anything from a square bill, super shallow, up to about that 15-foot point. That's where I would cut that off. I'm still playing around a little bit, but a lot of times I would consider maybe throwing that for jerk baits. Really kind of a 6 point anything, 6.3, 6.8, 6.4. Those are kind of the three main ones. That's just all around. You could really throw that for a majority of stuff out there. Spinner baits, buzz baits. I mean, you name it, you can use it. So that's probably the most versatile gear ratio, is in that 6 range. So, you know, when you're thinking about your only 3 rods that you have and how you want to pair that up, you know, a 6-speed gear ratio reel is likely going to be the best option for that, depending upon what exactly it is that you're fishing. So the next category is going to be the kind of the high speed gear ratios. I know there's some out there now, there's 10-to-1 and there's, you know, 9-to-1. I mean, there's a lot of higher ones out there. I don't go that high in my gear ratios, but I look at like a 7-1-to-1, 7-2-to-1, you know, get the point. To me, a lot of times that's another really good one for jerk baits. I tend to like that one a little bit better because when I make a long cast for jerk baits, I can slow that down when I need to, and I can speed it up when I need to. So a lot of times that's where I would gravitate more for like jerk baits. If you're wanting to burn spinner baits, for me, 7-1-to-1 is a really good gear ratio for that as well. Anymore, kind of your 6-3 and even in the 7s are kind of becoming like the do-it-all gear ratios. I know people that are using 7-speed gear ratios for crankbaits, which I don't do, but you know, for some it'll work. The next one up, which is actually what this reel is here, and you can see there, a lot of the reels will have what that gear ratio is, but this is an 8-1-to-1. Going back to the 7-speed, I use that 100% of the time for my jigs. Anything jig related that I'm doing, I will utilize that. So if you're big into jig fishing, to me, I've used an 8-speed for jigs, which is, you know, what this is, and I haven't been a really big fan of it. I feel like it's a little too fast for me, whereas, you know, the 7-speed I can speed up as needed or slow down as needed. But for an 8-speed, this is the highest that I go, and I use this mainly for 2 applications: top water, and if I'm Texas rigging, flipping, into heavy cover. You know, when you think about top water, you think about, you know, walking baits, poppers, frogs. You know, when you make those casts for your popper and your walking baits, you know, you're going to be making some far casts. When you hook into that fish, you're going to really want to catch up to it, or, you know, so that way you can get it to the boat a lot quicker, cover a lot more ground, and that way you're not fighting the fish as much. For the frog, it's kind of the same concept for when you're flipping, okay? You know, when you're throwing a frog, typically you're throwing a frog in thick, heavy cover. So when you sling it out there, you want to set that hook, and you're using this high-speed gear ratio so you can get the fish out of the cover, which is why I like this for flipping. Not all the time am I flipping really, really thick cover, but a lot of times where I'm flipping, I want to try to be able to get the fish out of there as quickly as possible, or if I'm throwing a frog, I want to be able to get it out of cover as quickly as possible. You know, and you're going to have the same concepts, right? For your spinning reel, there's generally a couple, most of your spinning reels are at somewhere around like a 5-2-to-1 gear ratio standard. And then you'll see some in the 6s that are more of like the high speed gear ratio. But for me, I haven't noticed as much of a difference personally when it comes to spinning reels as I do bait casters. And if you've got experience where you tend to use the higher speed spinning reel over, you know, a lower speed, put it in the comment below. I'd actually be curious to, you know, hear and get an idea of what your guys' thoughts are and how you break it down from a spinning reel standpoint. I just, for me personally, I haven't had that much of a difference that really helped me distinguish between, okay, this is when I need to throw the lower gear ratio, this is when I need to throw the higher. But again, you know, for one full rotation, again, that's going to be however many, you know, times that the spool's going to spin, right? So that's going to do it for this video. Don't let gear ratios confuse you, okay? Understanding how many times that spool's going to turn, obviously that's going to determine how many inches of line are getting brought in. Now, do I know exactly how many of inches per, you know, are being brought in each time? I personally don't. I'm sure you can find the information out there. There's a plethora of information on YouTube that likely has that information. But understanding, you know, what the gear ratios are and understanding what they're used for, what they're best used for, I should say, what they're best used for. You know, I've talked to people and they say all they use is a 6-speed reel. It doesn't matter if they're flipping, cranking, frogging, spinner baits, buzz baits, whatever. That's all they use. That's what they like. You know, teach their own, okay? But I'm telling you guys from my perspective how I utilize these different gear ratios for my technique. And I think somebody who's, you know, just getting into fishing, it's better to understand what the gear ratios are, so that way you can make the right choice when selecting, let's just say, a bait caster, for example. You know, if you're not understanding the difference in gear ratios and what they mean, and you go and you buy a 5-speed gear ratio and all you're wanting to do is go out flipping and pitching, you can do it, but you know, you're not going to be able to get that fish out of cover quickly, so where you'll be at a disadvantage. So I hope this video helps. Again, this is a pretty basic idea of, you know, what gear ratios mean, what they are, and how to apply them to the different techniques that you're fishing. I'm actually really excited. I haven't got a chance to fish with this yet. I'm really ready to spool this thing up. I really like this, but this will likely be a separate review. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to smash that like button down below. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. I'd love to have you be a part of, you know, this channel and help with growing my community and you know, my group of people that I'm hoping can start gravitating towards me. That way we can do what we all love to do, is just talk fishing and enjoy time out on the water. So, you know, I really hope that this was beneficial and it's something that can be taken away. Because for me, like I said, this can be very challenging and confusing when you're looking at it. And, you know, each brand has their own different gear ratios, and, you know, being able to understand the gist of what it means is going to help you understand, you know, what baits you should probably gravitate towards and how to fish those. So that's going to do it for me. Let's see. Next video that I got coming up, this is another one that I'm actually pretty excited about. We're going to be talking about selecting the right color for baits. We also in the pipeline are going to have understanding, you know, different rod actions and powers and what does all that mean. We'll be talking about understanding the difference in, you know, the types of line that's out there as well. When should you use one over the other? You know, a lot of that stuff being subjective, right? I mean, it's all going to be based on what works for me, but it'll be good content for somebody who's the beginner that's, you know, looking to get a better understanding. You know, we're just on the cusp of really getting that water to start warming up to where these fish can start coming up shallow. I've been out fishing a couple times, and I've caught one this year, and it was 3 pounds, 0.52 ounces. If I can get the video, I'll include it on this. My wife was able to record about halfway through of me fighting it. So that was really exciting. I caught that fish on a weightless Missile Baits 48, which was a lot of fun. So if I can get it, I'll put it down at the end of this video. again, guys, make sure you're smashing that like button. I really want to get into this YouTube algorithm so I can start getting my videos out there and we can start pumping out a lot more content. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you be a part of my family here and keep this thing going. Till next time, guys, you know the deal. Peace.
See them now. Nice.